Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero, the Dew Sweeper. You're listening to the Tour Coach Podcast, giving you insights into golf instruction at the highest level, from on the PGA Tour to our learning center at Frederica Golf Club. Sitting here on the Tour Coach Podcast, I've been excited to have this guest come on, legendary golf instructor, golf coach from across the pond. He's sitting in isolation right now, Mr. Pete Cowen. Pete, thanks so much for taking the time to sit in with me. And my brain is still a pretzel from all the things you told me there at the Caddy Shack outside of Augusta National in November. So we got some good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, well, morning to you, and Tony. It's afternoon here, but morning to you. Yeah, we did spend a little bit of time talking there at Augusta, and I fried a few people's brains, not just yours.
I'm still talking about that stuff, still trying to figure it all out. And so obviously you've taught so many of the great players in the game, and not just over there in Europe, but, obviously helped Brooks Koepka a good bit from over here. I'm curious, I touched on this before we came on. There was an article that came out, or you'd made some comments about one of your longtime students, Henrik Stenson, and about, kind of how players have the way they're wired, they can chase perfection and sometimes get away from some of the fundamentals and some of the things that have made them great. I'd love if you wouldn't mind to touch on that a bit, because I think that's fascinating. I've got some players that I think do that I've gone down that road with, where they get to the PGA Tour and they're obviously really good or they wouldn't get there. And yet there's this kind of pressure to change who they are or what they do to keep getting better. And it seems like quite often they get lost when doing that.
Yeah, I mean, Henrik's always been a bit of a perfectionist, really. I mean, I've taught him for over 20 years now, and he's been in the doldrums 2 or 3 times during those 20 years. And trying to get him out of that really is going back to basics and making sure they do the right things correctly, the simple things. And they always think it's a lot more complicated than it is. And I always say that, well, there's only 3 things you've got to get right. You've got to start the ball on line with the correct flight and the correct spin. So find out how you're going to do that, and, then you'll be able to play golf. And if you can do that, don't putt, because there isn't much else to be done. So the correct start line really comes down to your fundamentals. The ball flight really is getting your path pretty correct. And then the spin control is how you apply pressure to the ball to get spin control. So, and everybody thinks it's more complicated than that, but it isn't really.
I love that. And, one thing I would like you to talk about, or you talk about some qualities, or from your experience, how do you see the best players do those 3 things? Or what are some of the most, or the ways that they're really good at accomplishing those 3 things? And one thing that I see in really good players is how stable the club face is and how long it's stable through there. And I know that's a little bit of some of the things we touched on in Augusta, but I would love to hear your thoughts on what these great ball strikers do to be able to start it online, control trajectory in the spin. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, as you said, when we were talking about it down at Augusta, and I was saying to players, well, do you realize, or do you understand how to stabilize the face in a 3-dimensional movement? And it's always equal and opposite. And so I say, well, all you've got to do is get the equal and opposite pressure in your hands movements, especially putting, So putting, you've got left hand facing right hand, and if provided the pressure's equal between the hands, you can keep the club head stable. The difficulty then is obviously in the golf swing. When it's a 3-dimensional movement, the putting's much more 2-dimensional. And how you're going to stabilize the face in that 3-dimensional movement up and around the arc of the swing, and I call it the spiral staircase, how you're going to actually move it up the staircase with a square club face relative to the hand positions. And of course, how finger pressure is massive in that, how you oppose the finger pressure throughout the swing in the backswing and maintain that finger pressure all the way through to the finish. And it stops manipulation of the face with the hands. So that's one thing that we talk about an awful lot. And that obviously, with stabilizing the face, it's much easier then to just work on the path to shape your shots, really. Once you've got one consistent position of the club face, then all you've got to do is work on the path. And that really is alignment to the body.
Exactly. I mean, it's great stuff. Talk a little bit about the spiral staircase, if you don't mind. This was one of the paths that we started down at Augusta where my mind started pretzeling, but I would love to hear more about it, and I'd love to hear you explain a little bit, because it's a fascinating to me, it was a very interesting. I think some of the things that I've taught and heard before touched on it, but I never heard it described such as this.
Yeah, well, I've always called it a spiral staircase, and I've got a trademark called spiral staircase in relation to the golf swing. So it's trademarked, really, and it's been trademarked for nearly 30 years. And believing how to actually move the weight from the ground up throughout the body. I mean, the quickest way of getting from the ground floor to the first floor is a vertical. The second quickest way is a spiral, as you see the spiral staircase as you go up. Mm-hmm. It's a round and up. And so to get real coil in your body, you have to really use the spiral movement. And probably most of your listeners will know that everything in life is virtually spiral. Your DNA, you grow in the womb spiral, your trees grow spiral, your grass grows spiral, everything grows spiral, your muscles, your bones. And so everything is naturally spiral. So if you can spiral your body correctly, your muscle structure correctly, then you're going to prevent injury. And I know from my experience, I slipped a disc when I was in my 20s and I was out for 2 years. And then I had to, try and find out why I slipped that disc because of poor technique, and then to try and understand how I was not going to, injure it anymore during the rest of my career. So I studied that quite a lot. And then I found that the best way to actually get the club around and up is through a spiral movement. That's really spiraling your muscle structure. So we do exercises really to get that spiral in the body, because I believe that if I started all over again, I would do it totally differently. I would, and I talk about it quite often because it's muscle structure, and that's why I could say it's muscle structure during the spiral. And, well, think about it logically. Every golf shot takes about 1.5 seconds. So you're only moving your muscle structure for about 1.5 seconds during every golf swing. And when I said to players, well, how many full shots do you hit in a round of golf? And a good player will probably hit 40 maximum, not chips and putts, but 40 maximum full shots. So when you hit 40 full shots, you only done 40 multiplied by 1.5 seconds, which is 60 seconds. You actually physically only done physical work, relating to 1 minute's work with your physical in a round of golf that's probably taking you 4.5, 5 hours. And then I always say, well, how many really good shots did you hit? And they'll say 6 or 7. And I said, well, it's 10 seconds good work and 50 seconds not so good. So how does your mind know? How does your mind know which is, correct? So it's obviously the incorrect is much stronger in your mind than the correct movement. So then you probably go out and hit 400 balls, which nobody does. But let's pretend we hit 400 balls every afternoon, which would take you between 4 or 5 hours to do that. Multiply 400 by 1.5 seconds, and that's 600 seconds, so that's 10 minutes. So then I ask everybody, how many good shots did you hit and how many bad shots? And they always say, well, I hit half good, half bad. So I said, well, that's 50% good and 50% bad. Which does the brain know is the correct movement? You're confusing it. You've got 50% not good, 50% good. So sometimes it'll give you all good during a round of golf, and then all of a sudden when the pressure's on, it gives you one of the other 50%. So everybody says, well, I was playing so well, and then all of a sudden I hit this shot out of the blue that came from nowhere. I said, well, that's, again, the brain remembering the movement incorrectly. Mm-hmm. So we don't train the brain well enough. That's the problem. We don't train the brain well enough with the correct muscle structure movement. So if you said to an Olympic athlete, right, a golfer who's gone out and played a round of golf every morning and he's at 400 shots in the afternoon, which will take him all day, 10 hours, and he turns around and he says, well, you've actually only done 11 minutes work during that 10 hours that you've done. And then if you turn to an Olympic athlete and said, I'm going to be the best golfer in the world by working 11 minutes on my body movement, they'd laugh at you. They would really laugh at you. But that's it. In theory, that's what we're doing. We think about it a lot, and we drill this and we drill that and we drill that, but we never get the important part right, which is the body movement is the engine of the golf swing. If your engine's moving correctly, the game is a lot easier.
Yes. I have found in my teaching, and I think it goes along with what you're saying, that it's been much easier to help players learn the new movement or improved movements with things away from the golf ball, like using resistant bands and different things in a gym and exercises where they're away from the golf ball, not hitting. That would kind of make sense along the lines of what you're talking about. If they're just trying to do it while they're actively hitting the ball at full speed, it's much more difficult to make a change.
Yeah, of course it is. Very difficult. It's very difficult. And I always say, well, And when people say, well, explain that to me, and I say, well, the golf swing is very much like a car, right? A car. If I wanted to win every race, then I would want the best engine in the world, I'd want the best steering, I'd want the best driver and the best fuel. And hopefully when I've got those four things, I'll win every race. But I don't. And there's a reason for that sometimes, is the transmission that transfers the energy from the engine to the steering is flawed. So I don't get the correct energy from the engine to the steering at the right time, and it actually doesn't drive as well as it should do because the transmission or the linkage between the engine and the steering is flawed. So I could have four perfect component parts, the engine, the steering, the driver, and the fuel, but if the transmission or the linkage between those things is flawed, then I'm still not going to win. And the golf swing is very similar. The engine is your body movement, the steering is your arm, hand, and club movement, and your fuel and the driver is your brain. So hopefully your brain's, thinking well, and it's transferring. But then you look at that and you say, well, I've got a golfer, he's got great body action, he's got great arm, hand, and club movement, he's got the right brain to provide the fuel and the power to it, but the ball doesn't go where I want it to. And again, that's because the linkage or the transmission is flawed. And the transmission in the golf swing, if you think about it logically, what transfers the energy from your body movement, you created all this energy in the body, and transferring it to the direction, which is the arm, hand, and club movement, it has to be the shoulder muscle structure. So understanding the shoulder muscle structure of how to transfer that energy, to the steering is very, very important. So the linkage in the golf swing is your shoulders. And years ago, Ledbetter tried to do that by putting towels under his arm, the swing link thing, and that was okay. But what they did is they tied the shoulders into the body and never loaded the shoulders. I mean, that's like a boxer trying to box without loading his arm to punch. It was restriction, and it was all right for chipping or pitching, but it was no good for hitting it, 300 yards. And that's why Faldo could only hit it probably 260, 270 at his best. A bloke that was 6'4", and he hit it nowhere, really.
He's a big boy, yeah.
So really load the shoulders properly, and then when I ask the question to a lot of players, right, how do you load your shoulders for a fade? How do you load your shoulders for a draw? They look at you, well, it's a muscle structure. It's like throwing. If throwing underarm, it's a different muscle structure to throwing overarm. So it's a different structure. Making the correct movement in the shoulders determines whether your path of your club face can be moved left easily or to the right easily. So transferring that energy from the engine to the steering with the correct muscle loading and muscle unloading, it's really, really important.
How do you train somebody to load the correct muscle structure for, say, like a draw?
Tony, the best way of describing it is if you're a right-handed player and your lead arm, obviously your left arm, if you think about swinging it left arm, how would you unload that left shoulder to turn the club down to get the path to go in to out? You wouldn't move the left shoulder across, would you?
No.
You'd turn the muscle structure in the left shoulder down to get the club in a delivery position that is a path from the inside.
Correct. Okay.
So how you load it on the backswing determines how easy it's going to be to unload on the downswing. And the same thing, if your lead arm, so always look at your lead arm, it's so important. If your lead arm load on the backswing, you think about how you're going to hit a cut with your muscle structure in your lead arm to hit a cut. You open up and let the shoulder go down, don't you? And the path then goes down and across. So I get a full face fade delivered. Full fade, it's not a drag fade.
Right. Which is what happens to a lot of folks when they try to hit fades and try to do
Correct.
it. They get swipey fades.
Yeah, they do, and it starts right and cuts away from it. Fade's got to start left.
Mm-hmm.
So muscle structure in the shoulders, and think about it in the right arm as well. If you're a right-handed player in your right arm, how are you going to load that right shoulder, swinging one arm? How are you going to load that right shoulder so that you can turn your shoulder down and the club delivery down? You wouldn't move the right shoulder across her. You'd turn the muscle down to get the club in the delivery to hit the shot. So unless your muscle structure knows what you're doing, you're guessing with your hands how to hit the draw on a fade.
Yeah, it makes total sense when you start thinking about it in terms of that. I just had never necessarily thought about it in terms of the shoulders being the linkage and how to load the shoulders based on the path that you're trying to do.
Well, we've always done it, because as I said, everybody went into that towels under their arm to try and connect their arms to the body. Everybody's trying to connect their arm and club movement to the body, aren't they? Everybody's trying to do that. That's the holy grail, connect that to it. But it's got to be powerful as well. It has to be powerful, especially these days. And if you watch Bryson, he loads his shoulders so high and he locks them down and then he stretches up, which is where all his power comes from.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So if you don't load your shoulders for power movement, you'll not create the power just with your body, because you've got to actually transfer the power eventually.
So the shoulders of the linkage, like you said, they help transfer the power or the energy that you load and create in the backswing into your body.
If you think about you taught many people to stand there with the feet together, haven't you?
Right.
So you're negating the body a little bit. So how are you going to get any power into your arms, and your club? Well, if you think about it, it's how you punch. You would punch with your shoulder muscle structure, wouldn't you?
Right.
So if you're going to swing with your feet together, you've got to transfer that energy to the arm and the club, and the only way you're going to do it is with your lats and your shoulder muscle structure to transfer that energy.
Exactly. No, it makes total sense it's just, like I said, when I joked that my mind was in a pretzel, to me it's, I love the thought and the idea of it being the linkage. That makes sense to me because like I think we've all watched folks, not just tour events, like good college players or mini tour players, where you see a guy where like on video and you watch it and it looks really good. It's hard to figure out why the guy can't control his golf ball. I mean, there's just not a lot to pick out there.
No, you can't actually see it because you'd have to have all the sensors on the muscles within your shoulder muscle. But when you train them, you can see it straight away. So that's why I always say, like, you're trying to fade it with a draw muscle structure, and that's the double cross. And the only bad shot in golf is a double cross. And they say, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, your muscles are actually moving the club into a draw position to try and fade it, which is
and that won't work. That's a mismatch.
Well, it's total mismatch, a double cross, total double cross.
So with these thoughts and your ideas there, when a new player comes to you, obviously a great player's recently come to you. It broke yesterday that you're helping or starting to help Rory. But when a tour player comes to you, and where do you look first and where do you start? I'm always curious with great teachers, and obviously you're one of the greats of all time. Because I have new players come to me on occasion, and I just I like to pick your brain and learn and. Where do you start with that player? What are the things that you're looking at first when somebody like Rory comes to you?
Obviously, there's a problem there when they come to you, so you have to actually diagnose the problem. What is the problem? Is it a double cross? Is it a particular shot that you can't hit? Is it something that you're worried about during your swing? And then you look at how the body's structured and how that transfer of energy from that body, because it can be just the body out of position as well that dictates that you can't get your muscle structure in the right place. So again, loading the body spirally for me is really, really important, because without that, it's a turn and a turn, and a turn and a turn doesn't allow you to get the club down.
Now, so when you evaluate a player like this, I know there's so much technology out there now. Do you use a lot of technology to help you evaluate that, or is that just something from your years of experience in your eye? And I mean, as great as you are, you kind of could see all that without. And how do you? Well,
luckily, nearly 20 years ago now, 2003, Klaus, who owns TrackMan, came to me in 2003 and said, "I want you to have a look at this, machine I've got for, ball flight laws." And I said, well, fine. And I'd been arguing with the PGA of Britain for years that your ball flight laws are, no, they're not. I said, well, I know for a fact they are, but I can't prove it. I said, and then all of a sudden TrackMan came along and suddenly said, right, the path is much more important than the face in relative terms of spin control. So, everybody used to think that the club face spun it and the path started it. And we now know it's total. I couldn't prove it until then. So I have used TrackMan since 2003, really, so an awful long time. But I use it sparingly. I like to use it, to test players, his distance control and all that. But first of all, obviously path, club face, very important. Just the basic stuff, looking at it and seeing what we've got with the player, and then we can take it from there. So it's just reading the numbers and saying, right, this is what we can see here. How are we going to actually improve that? How are we going to change that? How are we going to get that movement a lot better? So yes, I do use TrackMan. Video was the biggest improvement in coaching all those years ago, and now with all the iPhones, it's easy, isn't it?
I think it makes it easier for coaching folks as well. As I remember when I took my first real serious golf lessons and went off, and then I'd go off to college, and I was a okay player and really wanted to be good, but I don't know that I knew how. And but like when I left the lesson, I was on my own. There was no way, I couldn't go. You couldn't send a video back then, and you think now how much easier it is now for folks that really want to get better, because the ability to video themselves. Your guys could send you a video back home in the K from over here, and you're able to look at it and help keep them on track. It's to me, it's significantly easier to help coach and monitor players than it used to be.
Oh, it's definitely is. I'm no doubt about that. But there's also what I do with players. I give them physical exercises to do. I do about 12. There's 12 specific exercises I get them to do to make the body move an awful lot better. But my coaching became better when I started to understand muscle structure and how the body moved, really. It moved it on from just swinging into out to in and, standing left, standing right and all that. But the muscle structure change was massive for me. And then I added to that, because I got the spiral body movement correct for 20-odd years, but the one thing I missed was how the shoulders spiraled as well in the backswing as well.
How did you figure that out? How did you stumble upon that or get driven to figure that part of it out?
Well, doing my own, R&D. I always go and do my own research and development on myself, because I was a decent player. And so I would always go out and I learned much more about golf swing in bunkers than ever. And of course, I found out we're throwing the sand over the shoulder in the bunker, spiraled my shoulders correctly. And it took me a while to figure that out. Why is that so good when I'm throwing the sand over my right shoulder and throwing it back over my left shoulder? And it was really how the shoulders worked in a spiral sense on the backswing, on the through swing, that all of a sudden I said that's what's missing in the long game as well. So it was in the bunker that I found that out, really.
Wow, that's fascinating. The future of coaching, you see tons of new coaches out there. Do you think with all the technology that coaching and teaching is getting better now, or is it the same? Do you think technology is helping that? I'm just curious your thoughts. Well, I'll get several young folks that want to come and observe, and more. It seems like more and more, there's more and more teachers out there aspiring to do what you do. Curious on your thoughts on that.
I think coaching obviously is getting better and better, and it's got to. As a coach, sometimes you get called a crank because you actually move off the norm. You move off. You don't go down, normal paths. You go down a slightly different avenue, which is what I did with the spiral staircase and others. And then all of a sudden, your players win tournaments, and suddenly everybody says, "Well, he must be doing something right." Instead of being called a crank, you're called innovative. It goes from crank to being innovative. And that's why I like, people like Genghis, who is innovative. I like that. I like talking to him because, he's new. And there's got to be innovation to improve. So all these new young coaches have got to go out and find that innovation and say, right, what really works. But with me going in the bunker, if it doesn't work for 21 days in a row, I discard it. And I've discarded an awful lot. So I've gone fail. And then sometimes, all right, that succeeds. And does it succeed? Succeeds. And if it keeps going, then I add it to my portfolio. I'll add it to me. And I've got some good young assistants that coach for me, and I'll work on it with them and say, right, I want you to do this for 21 days and see whether it works for you. So it's quite interesting. And they're young coaches that want to get better. So I said, well, you've got to eventually do your own research and development.
No question. Yeah.
It's not reading it in a book. I've just given 4,000 golf books away. I've just given them away. I gave them all away. I had 4,000 golf books. And I thought, well, I've gone through all those, and they're all saying basically the same thing. I kept probably 30 of the good stuff, and and I've never written anything myself, and I don't put anything on YouTube. Whatever's gone on YouTube is put on there by other people. So, and it's fine if they want to put that on there, but unless I actually really think it's very, very relevant to everybody, I'll just keep it to myself for a while. But my if you like, the exercises that I do, eventually I will put that out. It's 12 very, very important exercises to improve the body movement, to improve the arm and club movement, and to improve the connection between the two.
I think that would be fantastic to see those exercises. I think I'm way less far along than you, but starting to understand more work. My teaching, I know, has improved as I've really developed my understanding of what certain things in the body do, how to train them. It's helped me. It's helped me help more people instead of just a few that would come. I mean, I think I was always decent at communicating and helping some people, but there were the people like you felt like you did a good job with that just never got any damn better. And, those were the ones that stressed me.
You'll always get stressed coaching because you think you failed if you haven't improved somebody. And I always say, well, there's always the one that you unfortunately you can't get past a certain level. That's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And I experienced that when I tried to learn the piano. I asked a guy who was a piano teacher. I said, right, I want to learn the piano. He said, well, that's good because I want to learn golf. So I said, well, you come along in the summer and I'll give you a few golf lessons. And then in the winter, when I'm not doing a lot, I'll try and, learn the piano. So he came along in summer, he improved a little bit. And then I went to him in winter and we started with the piano. And after about 6 piano lessons, he says, I think I'd better pay for my golf lessons.
That's fantastic.
Meaning I'm useless at playing the piano, so I never got past that certain level, so I gave it up.
Do you ever sit back, like, where, knowing what you know now, like the things that you figured out, and obviously experience just plays a big part of that, but like you look back on a good player you had way back where you're like, God, I wish I knew I wish I knew this stuff now. I think I could have helped him. It was somebody you didn't help.
I think there's a couple of those that were really brilliant, and then they lost the way. Not with me, they'd lost the way going searching for perfection. They'd lost the way, and then they'd come to me to try and unravel it, and I don't think I unraveled it as well as I could do. So knowing what I know now, I probably would have unraveled it a lot better.
What's your advice for professionals out there that get lost? I mean, because I think it seems like there's plenty of those. I mean, and it's hard for me. I teach a lot of young guys. You can prepare them for what they're going to encounter as they become professional and they get their tour card. But there's there's lots of pressures and distractions, and they change as they go up the ladder. And no matter how you prepare them, it seems like it's difficult at times to keep them from going on that search.
They'll always will, because when there's always somebody playing well or doing things that oh God, what's he doing? That instead of having the blinkers on and saying, right, I go to tournaments to actually play good golf. I don't go to tournaments to actually learn a new golf swing. So you've got to keep the blinkers on a little bit and stop the distractions, really. So distractions out there. There's always somebody playing really well that week. And so they all, what's he doing? What's he doing? What's he doing? Or what's she doing? What's she doing? What's she doing? And they'll get distracted and they'll, I'll try that. The more they try, the further away from where they need to be they get. So they do get distracted very, very easily. So it's very, very important to actually almost say, right, I'm going to a tournament to actually play golf. I'm not going to a tournament to try and learn a new golf swing.
Doesn't work very well, does it?
No, it definitely doesn't. But that's what I seem to do. That's what I seem to do with Henrik every week, learn a new golf swing.
I've seen you every now and then. I'll try to get close to you on the range just to see if I can hear what's going on. But it's always fun to watch. And Pete, thank you so much, one, for taking the time. I know you're busy. You've got tons of important players out there. And also thank you for the time you took at Augusta and frying my brain a little bit. And hopefully down the road, I'll have the opportunity in a caddy shack to pick your brain a little bit more about this shoulder structure and see if you can help me out.
I will do that, Tony. Always nice to hear from you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Tour Coach with Tony Ruggiero. If you enjoyed this, make sure to hit subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening to this podcast, you can stay up to date because we have weekly episodes coming your way with fascinating people in the world of golf instruction at the highest level. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. If you want to learn more about Tony, head over to dewsweepersgolf.com. to get all the details on what he's up to. Maybe you want to see him, grab a lesson, or go to one of his camps, pick up his book, Lessons from the Legends. You can do that there. If you want to see Tony in action with some videos and other content, head over to golfsciencelab.com/Tony to get more info there. This episode was powered by the Golf Science Lab and was edited, mixed, and produced by Just Hit Publish Productions.
We go into year 2 of the Tour Coach. It wouldn't be possible without the support of all our sponsors. And I've had some great ones. And one of the things that I'm most proud of in my career and in my business is the fact that all of my relationships here and all these sponsorships have been long withstanding relationships, haven't jumped from sponsor to sponsor and manufacturer to manufacturer. And I've always prided ourselves in special relationships and when people work together, support each other, and we've all put out great products for the benefits of everybody else. So I want to give a special thanks to these folks that have been with me for such a long time. And that would be the folks at Srixon, Cleveland Golf, and Zexio. Couldn't ask for a better manufacturer to be aligned with. And not only do they put out great product and great support, but they're first-class people and they believe in what we're doing here on the Tour Coach and with the Dew Sweepers, and also Vineyard Vines. Ian, Shep, TJ, and all the folks at Vineyard Vines. It's hard to keep me looking good, but they do a fantastic job. And they're like family. They support everything on the Dew Sweepers, and we're so proud to be affiliated with and support the folks at Vineyard Vines. So if you're out there, you're listening to the Tour Coach, please support our sponsors, Srixon, Cleveland Golf, Zexio, as well as Vineyard Vines, and keep listening and keep enjoying hanging out with us here on the Tour Coach.